colleagues, dear friends, dragi prieteni, vă rog să luați în sală loc. If you need translation, you can use the headsets. We have speeches in Romanian and in English. The headsets are in the back of the room. We will start in about 1 minute, so please take your seats. Thank you very much. Dragi colegi, cred că 50 secunde începe conferința noastră.
Bună ziua! Good afternoon. Dear friends, I'm honored today to welcome you here at the European Think Tank Conference. That we are honored at the Institute for European Policy and Reforms to organize, together with our partners, the German Marshall Fund and Black Sea Trust from Romania office, and with the support of the European Union. Today's topic of the conference is very much about the process of European integration and the importance of safeguarding democracy in a very difficult, shifting geopolitical environment. This morning we had discussions with a focus on Moldova in the context of the upcoming elections and Russia foreign interference activities in Moldova and Moldova's capacity to resist these challenges. Now we will move on into more broader regional debate about enlargement. Today, 27th of June, is also symbolic because today we have 11 years since we have signed the association agreement with the European Union. And also yesterday we had very important decisions taken by the European Council about the advancement of the EU accession process with Ukraine and Moldova. We'll have a very interesting debate panel later on, and we'll have our distinguished friend and colleague, Ms. Cristina Gerasimov, Deputy Prime Minister, with a keynote address to provide you a kind of a Moldova point of view about the current path to EU. But before that, I'd like to ask our partners to say a few words at the beginning as opening remarks, and I'd like to invite Ambassador Yanis Mazeiks, Ambassador of the European Union to the Republic of Moldova. Yanis, please.
Dear guests, dear partners, dear Julian, dear Christina, it is a great pleasure for me to be part of this forum, which is dedicated to deepening the integration of the Republic of Moldova into the European Union. We live in a world where the battle between the good and the evil is becoming more and more clear. And usually this is not the kind of words I would be saying, but I think this is one of the situations when, at least in part of the world, the picture is quite black and white. And I think that's why it is so important the European Union is on the side of the good fighting for the fundamental values of peace, freedom, democracy. In this complex geopolitical landscape, Moldova's path towards the European Union represents more than just a strategic choice. It is also a declaration of Moldova's values. 3 years after achieving candidate country status and 1 year after opening accession negotiations, Moldova demonstrates through its actions bold reforms and political commitment that it belongs in the European family. The pace of reforms, the resilience of institutions and the determination of the Moldovan people to forge a European future have all surpassed our and yours perhaps expectations. Moldova is no longer just an aspiring country. It is a country that is moving forward. Enlargement is not just a technical or geopolitical process. It is an opportunity to promote peace, prosperity and democratic resilience across Europe. And Moldova is part of that vision, not on the margins, but at the heart of the European project. Of course, the road ahead is complex. It requires vision, it requires unity, and it requires perseverance. However, it also brings hope, it brings stability, and it brings real opportunities for the Moldovan people. Reforms require time and political courage. This is particularly true of reforms related to justice, to fighting corruption, improving the economy, and to improving the public administration. However, these reforms are not just the EU requirements. These are Moldova's priorities, and these are priorities for the Moldovan people. With each step, Moldova becomes stronger, more stable, and better prepared for EU membership, but also becomes more resilient as a country. We are aware of the challenges which range from disinformation and foreign interference to economic pressures and hybrid threats. These challenges are real and they require a unified response. The European Union supports Moldova not only through declarations but through our security cooperation, support for energy resilience and concrete efforts to combat malicious influences from abroad. Looking ahead, the priorities are clear. Justice reforms, strengthened democratic institutions, combating corruption and building resilience to hybrid threats. These are ambitious goals, but they are necessary for the accession process to move forward in a credible and sustainable way. Citizens' trust must remain the foundation of this process. European integration must not be perceived as a technical or abstract process, but as a collective effort that brings tangible benefits, stability, jobs, better public services, a justice system in which citizens have confidence. And therefore reforms must be fair, transparent and clearly explained to citizens so that they understand each step as an investment in a better future. Civil society, think tanks and the free media all play essential roles in this process. They bridge the gap between the public policy and the people, they drive reform and serve as a barometer of trust. As we know, but also as Moldovan people must know, the road towards the European Union is not an easy one, but it brings tangible benefits. It is a path of those who choose courage over fear, truth over manipulation, and dignity over compromise. It is clear that Moldova has this vision. The European Union will support Moldova on every step of its way, because your success will be also our success. We need each other. We need a free and unified Europe. One that keeps its promises and supports its neighbors when they choose democracy. Moldova has made that choice, and today we reaffirm that Moldova is not alone, and perhaps even more importantly, this will be reaffirmed a week from now at the first ever summit of EU and Moldova. We are going to support ambitious and credible enlargement process that reflects a more united Europe, better prepared for the future. Moldova's European future is possible, and together we can build it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your introductory remarks. Now I'd like to invite our partner, Clara Valentiru, representing GMF. Please.
Thank you, Julian, so much, not just for inviting me and allowing me to say a few words today, but for all the work that you've been doing. It's incredibly important to push forward with your expertise and the network of experts that you mobilize in really advancing together Moldova's future. And I think Moldova stands uniquely as a light in the pre-accession process history because it does manage to do so with a whole of society approach. I think in terms of what you, Ambassador, mentioned, that the EU integration, the pre-accession process is not an abstract challenge. It's actually a challenge and a benefit to everyone involved, not just in Moldova, but also within the European Union. We all need to make sure that that experience, that positive experience, is shared and felt. And initiatives such as those under our current project, INCRES, and the many initiatives supported by the Moldovan government and the European Union, where we are humbly a part of and very proud to do so, do push forward in local communities at individual level the positive experience of what the European integration process means. And that is even more important today given the extraordinarily dimension of the challenges that the Moldovan democracy is facing from abroad, from malign interferences, from a continuous informational war to distort the public's trust in its institutions and its European trajectory. And luckily, and again, thanks to projects such as these, that is not as effective as some might have thought, because the Moldovan public is very resilient and convinced that their future is within the European Union. And that is again a credit to all stakeholders involved. And I know there are much more consistent messages that you are waiting forward to, but a final point on my agenda for today is to really make sure that I remind you all, and I remind myself as an implementing partner for the European Commission and our local partners in Moldova, that these bridges, these mutual engagement processes, the multi-stakeholder engagement, the whole of society approach is the heart of the matter. However much technical support, however much, let's say, reform checklists there might be in the EU enlargement process, having everyone on board, sharing not just the burden, but also the ownership of the enlargement process is extraordinarily important. And we are very proud and again humbled to stand next to you in this path, in this historical trajectory that Moldova and you are facing ahead. Many thanks to everyone, and I look forward to many more events where we salute Moldova's path towards the European Union.
Thank you very much, Clara. Now for the audience in the room and also those watching us online, just to mention that we'll switch to Romanian because I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. Îmi face onoare și o deosebită plăcere să o invit pe doamna Cristina Gerasimov, viceprim-ministru pentru integrarea europeană, să ne vorbească un pic despre ceea ce nu se vede în spatele efortului de aderare la Uniunea Europeană, despre provocările, despre reziliența, despre reformele, despre pașii pe care Republica Moldova întreprinde în calea sa europeană, așa că, doamna viceprim-ministru, vă invit.
Înainte de a începe, just to give a warm welcome to everyone who made their way to Chișinău today. Thank you very much for being here, but the rest of my, Ilan, do you want help? The rest of my presentation will be in Romanian. Stimați colegi, dragi prieteni, mă bucur foarte mult să mă aflu astăzi aici cu dumneavoastră și vă mulțumesc mult organizatorilor pentru această invitație de a deschide acest forum care a devenit pentru noi un reper în dialogul despre viitorul european al țării noastre, despre prioritățile noastre și cum reușim împreună să mișcăm carul din loc. Este un forum care are loc exact la 11 ani de la data semnării acordului de asociere, așa cum a menționat și Iulian, și vine chiar în a doua zi în urma unor concluzii ale Consiliului European foarte importante pentru țara noastră. Reformă, reziliență și determinare. Acestea sunt cele 3 repere care definesc parcursul nostru european. Ele reflectă cu fidelitate esența parcursului nostru. Pentru noi, integrarea în UE nu este un simplu proiect politic și sper că deja toți au înțeles acest lucru. Este un angajament strategic, este o responsabilitate morală față de cetățeni, este alegerea noastră istorică de a construi un stat democratic, funcțional și prosper, partea unei Europe unite prin valori și inspirații comune. Așadar, aș vrea astăzi să vă vorbesc despre acest drum pe care îl parcurgem împreună, ca despre o transformare cu adevărat profundă a societății noastre, una pentru care avem nevoie de implicarea absolut a fiecăruia și care se bazează pe acești 3 piloni. Aș dori însă să încep cu un sincer mulțumesc adresat tuturor celor care reprezentați astăzi aici societatea civilă, think tank-urile și mediul academic. Aportul dumneavoastră, știți foarte bine, este unul esențial în tot ceea ce facem, fără nicio exagerare. Menținem împreună un dialog critic și onest în fundamentarea politicilor publice și în apropierea procesului de integrare de cetățenii noștri. Nu spun aceste lucruri din rațiuni, ci țin de politețe, din contra. În calitate de viceprim-ministră pentru integrare europeană spun cu toată deschiderea că fără contribuția dumneavoastră, fără expertiza pe care o furnizați, fără presiunea constructivă pe care o puneți, fără ideile inovatoare provenite inclusiv din afara guvernului, Republica Moldova nu ar fi ajuns atât de departe astăzi în parcursul său european, într-un interval atât de scurt de timp. Știm cu toții că alegerea europeană este pentru țara noastră una existențială. Este alegerea unei țări care a cunoscut sărăcia, corupția și frica. Este alegerea unui stat care învață să se bazeze pe reguli, pe transparență și pe cooperare. Dar mai ales este despre garantarea unui viitor în pace. O pace pe care nu o putem asigura dacă nu vom aparține unei familii de state care împărtășesc aceleași valori și care în cele mai grele momente se sprijină reciproc. Această alegere nu este una de conjunctură, este răspunsul nostru la un trecut complicat și totodată proiectul nostru de viitor. Iar acest proiect are nevoie de cele 3 ingrediente esențiale: reforme, reziliență și determinare, despre care o să vă vorbesc astăzi. Desigur că opțiunea europeană implică reforme, asta o știm cu toți. Reforme profunde, sistemice, deseori foarte dificile și absolut necesare. Chiar dacă ritmul este alert și impus în parte de calendarul accelerat al integrării, aceste reforme nu vin din exterior. Ele răspund unor așteptări pe care cetățenii Moldovei le-au exprimat de mai bine de 30 de ani. În urmă cu doar câteva zile am marcat 35 de ani de la Declarația de Suveranitate din 23 iunie 1990. Atunci cetățenii noștri au spus clar că își doresc să trăiască într-un stat democratic și fundamentat pe supremația legii, orientat spre Europa. Dar puțini dintre noi știau atunci ce înseamnă asta cu adevărat și cum se clădește drumul nostru pentru ca acest vis să devină realitate. Din păcate, anii care au urmat au fost plini de întârzieri, ezitări și mai ales speranțe năruite. Istoria uneori ne predă de altfel lecții neașteptate. Obținerea statutului de stat candidat pentru aderare la Uniunea Europeană a survenit tot pe 23 iunie. În 2022, la fix 31 de ani de când făceam primul pas spre libertate și dreptul de a ne decide soarta, am primit semnalul că suntem bineveniți în marea familie a democrațiilor de pe continentul nostru. Astăzi, în sfârșit, avem această oportunitate istorică de care tot vorbim, pentru a recupera acest decalaj. Iar parcursul nostru european ne ajută să facem reforme mai bune, mai coerente și mai relevante pentru viața oamenilor. Subliniez o justiție dreaptă, o administrație eficientă, o economie competitivă, toate acestea sunt lucruri pe care le datorăm oamenilor noștri și nu Bruxellesului. Pentru că faptul că suntem astăzi în această etapă a procesului de aderare este o realizare în sine. În doar 3 ani am obținut statutul de țară candidată, am lansat oficial negocierile de aderare, am finalizat screeningul explicativ, suntem pe ultima 100 de metri în screeningul bilateral și facem tot posibilul ca să deschidem negocierile pentru primul grup de capitole cât de curând posibil. Reformele însă nu pot fi susținute fără un al doilea pilon esențial și anume reziliența. Capacitatea noastră de a rămâne în picioare, de a nu fi distrași sau deturnați de presiunile uriașe la care suntem supuși. Din 2021, în special, țara noastră este ținta unor atacuri hibride constante, fie că e vorba de dezinformare masivă, tentative de destabilizare, șantaj energetic, finanțări ilegale ale partidelor, cumpărare de voturi și exploatarea vulnerabilităților economice și sociale. Într-un context regional extrem de complicat, demonstrăm că suntem un stat care rezistă, se adaptează și își păstrează direcția. Combatem mass media care minte și incită oamenii, ne-am rupt de șantajul Gazprom, am prevenit participarea forțelor politice corupte la alegeri, am devoalat rețelele de mită electorală. Continuăm și astăzi să fim ținta unor noi tentative de a submina voința liberă exprimată a cetățenilor. De aceea, așa cum think tank-urile și organizațiile neguvernamentale au jucat un rol crucial în combaterea narativelor false până acum, vom avea nevoie de contribuția noastră și mai departe. Pentru că apărarea democrației este lupta pe care o ducem, din păcate, în fiecare zi. Democrația nu este un dat, ci este o alegere zilnică și nu prea ne gândim la asta de zi cu zi. Ea nu se consolidează printr-un singur vot, o reformă sau o schimbare de guvern, ci printr-un efort constant al fiecăruia din noi, cetățeni, instituții, lideri politici și societate civilă. Este o construcție vie care se sprijină pe transparență, pe participare, pe responsabilitate și respect reciproc. În fața amenințărilor hibride, a populismului și a tentației autoritarismului, lupta pentru democrație devine mai necesară ca oricând. Nu există un moment în care putem spune că această luptă s-a încheiat. Este o misiune fără sfârșit, pentru că libertatea, dreptatea și dreptul de a alege trebuie apărate în fiecare zi. Astfel ne vom putea consolida reziliența nu doar prin intermediul instituțiilor de forță sau prin infrastructură și securitate cibernetică, ci și printr-un amplu efort de protejare a cetățenilor în fața dezbinării, în fața dezinformării. Pentru că a fost și este o luptă inegală, adversarii noștri nu doar că nu joacă după reguli, dar au la dispoziție resurse semnificativ mai mari. Și dați-mi voie să vă spun că reziliența noastră este importantă și pentru Ucraina. Suntem recunoscători Ucrainei, care cu un curaj greu de imaginat, apără nu doar teritoriul propriu, ci valorile noastre ale tuturor. Cu atât mai important este că noi să nu admitem ca democrația noastră să cedeze, pentru că atunci și Ucraina ar deveni vulnerabilă de-a lungul frontierei cu țara noastră. Doamnelor și domnilor, dacă am învățat ceva în acești ani de transformare, este că nici reforma, nici reziliența nu sunt posibile fără determinare. Fără acel efort susținut, uneori invizibil, al celor care cred cu adevărat în acest drum. Această determinare este poate cel mai important capital al nostru ca societate. Me refer aici la oamenii care muncesc cu adevărat zi și noapte pentru integrarea europeană. Vorbeam mai devreme despre rolul celor din afara instituțiilor, dar se cuvine să menționez și determinarea celor care muncesc în administrația publică, în instituțiile statului. O determinare care înseamnă deseori zile de lucru de 14 sau 16 ore, concedii amânate, sărbători petrecute la birou. Pentru mulți dintre colegii mei nu mai există de mult diferența dintre lucru și sfârșit de săptămână. Uneori glumesc că abia după aderarea la Uniunea Europeană o să avem și noi weekenduri libere. Cred că așa și va fi. Dar dincolo de glumă este vorba despre un angajament profund, despre înțelegerea faptului că ceea ce construim acum trebuie să fie trainic, că lucrurile făcute temeinic durează mai mult, dar rezistă. Că această generație are misiunea de a închide tranziția dureroasă și de a deschide o nouă etapă, cea a apartenenței depline la spațiul european. Dragi prieteni, integrarea europeană este o muncă de echipă. Este o transformare care nu se face de sus în jos. Ea se face împreună, cu sprijinul societății civile, al mediului academic, al sectorului privat, al partenerilor noștri internaționali și mai ales cu participarea cetățenilor. De aceea, forumuri precum acesta, organizat de IPRE, sunt esențiale. Ele creează spații de dialog, dezbatere și responsabilizare. Ele conectează administrația publică cu experții, tinerii, inițiativele locale. Ele ne ajută să ne calibrăm direcția și să ne măsurăm progresul. Încheierea cu succes a procesului de integrare europeană a Moldovei depinde de capacitatea noastră de a continua să ne mobilizăm cu toate resursele umane și intelectuale pe care le avem la dispoziție. Efortul nostru trebuie să continue cu și mai multă rigoare, cu și mai mult curaj. Pentru că fereastra de oportunitate nu va rămâne la nesfârșit deschisă. Și în numele Guvernului vă asigur de o deschidere totală din partea noastră de a lucra împreună. Aderarea la UE nu este un punct de sosire, este un proces de transformare continuă care cere onestitate, consecvență și curaj. Și așa cum am demonstrat în acești ultimi ani, Moldova are tot ce-i trebuie pentru a reuși. Voință politică, sprijin popular și o comunitate de oameni dedicați care cred în viitorul nostru european, atât aici în Moldova, cât și peste hotarele ei. Vă doresc o zi de dezbatere azi cât mai inspirate și constructive. Mulțumesc!
Mulțumesc foarte mult, doamna Gerasimov, pentru acest discurs care a redat și o latură umană foarte importantă. Am simțit și emoțiile pe care le-ați avut atunci când ați vorbit despre determinare, despre oamenii care stau în spatele acestui proces. Și este foarte important să ținem minte că multe lucruri pe care le reușim să le facem, ele nu sunt de gata, ele implică un efort imens pentru acelor care stau acasă aici, fie că sunt la guvern, fie că sunt în misiuni diplomatice, colegii noștri la Bruxelles, că am fost ieri la Bruxelles și am discutat și cu Daniela Murari. Știu foarte mult cât muncă se depune, inclusiv prin experiența proprie din viața mea precedentă. Așa că felicitări și vă mulțumim mult pentru efortul pe care îl aveți, tuturor celor implicați în acest efort și continuăm această conferință făcând un zoom out pentru a discuta procesul de extindere de perspectivă regională, să discutăm despre ce pot face țările candidate împreună, Ucraina, Moldova, țările din Balcanii de Vest. Și vreau să invit paneliștii noștri de bază. Am să vorbesc deja în limba engleză, dacă îmi permiteți, așa că cei care ne urmăresc să fiți conștienți. So I'd like to invite our panelists to our main panel, high-level panel of discussion. And Ambassador, please, if you want to take the seat in front. I'd like also to invite Ambassador Tomasz Głobrzej, who is the ambassador of Poland in Republic of. You choose ambassador. Poland has represented, the presidency of the Council of the European Union over the last 6 months. Next week, this presidency will be transmitted to Denmark. So it's my pleasure to invite Yasmin Soren, who is the deputy head of the mission of the Embassy of Denmark in the Republic of Moldova. Yasmin, welcome. I'd like also to invite Kerry Langrest. She's a researcher, a fellow. She also from Civitas, from Poland. She's a British national, but very much working a lot on EU integration. And I have to say that Kerry has been my mentor when UK still was in the European Union at Birmingham University, at the European Research Institute. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to have you here. I'd like also to invite Katerina Musinko. She's a Ukrainian think tanker, a researcher. She has been working at the European Parliament in the cabinet of Mr. Kubilius. Now she's an activist representing ANTCAS, that is an NGO very much promoting Ukraine agenda in the European Union and outside. I would also like to invite Drita Abu Khalili. She's a former chief negotiator of North Macedonia and a good friend of Moldova for the last a year or so, I would say. She has been our guest at the European Integration Forum in winter last year. Welcome very much, Drita, with us here, very much helping Moldova. Transferring the expertise and experience of Macedonia to Republic of Moldova. I'll take my seat also close to you, Drita. And with your permission, I will start to moderate this distinguished panel. And I'd like to start with you, Ambassador. You have mentioned at the very beginning in your introductory remarks about the importance of EU-Moldova relations in the very complex environment. We have seen the very important conclusions made yesterday by the European Council. We know already the road that Moldova has passed over the last 3 years in terms of advancing towards accession to the EU. But I'd like to ask you if you'd like to underline the most important aspects, challenges, but also priorities that Moldova should focus on in the nearest future to maintain this accession process with the European Union. Please, Ambassador.
No.
Yes.
Okay, now it is. Okay, thank you very much, Julian. Well, first, I think it is important to remark what has already happened. And I think what has happened and not happened is that Moldova has not missed a single chance in the last 3 years. And I think that's already a very important starting point, because once in a while there's things that we're not very happy with, things happening in Moldova. But when it comes to European integration, indeed, whenever there was a chance to advance, Moldova has used that chance, and sometimes also creating these chances. So I think my point of departure is this, that what has been built in the past 3 years is very good. Because indeed, as Deputy Prime Minister Gerasimov already highlighted in her intervention, screening is ongoing, the initial part of screening is over, the bilateral part is getting to the end. We are ready for the launch of negotiations. So far, so good. What is important is to keep this high speed of building relations also for the future. And I think there are several elements to it. One is the very obvious elections that are going to take place in this September, and that is where the Moldovan citizens will be determining whether the European course of the Republic of Moldova, that has been built very consistently for the past 3 years, is maintained in the future. Because we have seen countries that have used that chance, and we have also seen countries that have slowed down or even have been backtracking. And I think that would be a historical mistake if that was the case here. Of course, for the elections, it is also very importantly the context of external interference, because it is clear that the Russian Federation is not happy with the direction that Moldova and its people has chosen, and that there will be lots of election interference, be it buying votes or be it disinformation, which we are already seeing. So that's why it is very important that the government does its work to counter that the civil society does its work to educate the people, and that the independent media do their work to bring this to light. But the other aspect, assuming that the elections bring a continuation of the path that was chosen by the Moldovan people at the referendum last year, is how to build this. And for that is a matter of having a credible process, so that we're not just going quick, but we are also sure that we have Republica Moldova ready to fill all the obligations of a member state. And that's why I encourage everyone to rely also on the EU documents, because sometimes we are told, well, why are not criticizing Moldova for this or that? And I always say, well, please read the enlargement report. You can see all our criticisms there. Please refer to that criticism, and if you have things to contribute where we should be more critical, convey that to us, because that report is also developed in cooperation with civil society. In other words, there's lots of ways how to input that, so that the process is not only quick, but it is also credible, as it has been so far.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Just to remind you, we'll have this panel with few intro remarks, but then I'll turn to the audience, so please get your questions ready. Now I'd like to turn to Ambassador Tomasz Kobrzej. Poland had a very difficult task to take over the coordination in the Council discussions, a lot of challenges over the last time. Yesterday we have seen the debates at the European Council. Ambassador, what are the lessons to be learned given the experience of Poland in the last 6 months, and what could you highlight as most important decisions to make sure that, to ensure the political will, a joint political will to advance the enlargement process? We have seen the approach that the Council has adopted, but please share what was the role of Poland in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you. No, crucial, of course. But first of all, let me start with Julian, with wishing you happy birthday, you and your organization, IPRE. And let me express my appreciations to you for wearing the official tie of the Polish presidency today. So much appreciated. Yes, it was a quite turbulent semester. For many reasons. Regionally, globally, Poland took on its EU Council presidency in the Council of the European Union with a very clear agenda. It was declared many times by the highest authorities of Poland, but even before the presidency, it was written in the official documents, in the program of the presidency, that boosting the enlargement process would be one of the priorities of the Polish presidency, to maximize progress in accession negotiations. It was applying both for the Western Balkans and the Eastern candidates, Ukraine and Moldova. And Poland took lots of initiatives to emphasize how important the enlargement has been for us. We are very proud and happy to host the highest authorities, representatives of the candidate countries at all the important fora of European Union under the Polish presidency. Deputy Prime Minister Krystyna Gerasimov took part in the General Affairs Council. Generally, all the representatives, many representatives of the Moldovan governments took part in the sectoral councils or other ministerial meetings organized by the presidency just to underline the importance of the enlargement process. For the General Affairs Council, one chair was empty. It was the Georgian one. So, to refer to, in a way, to what was said by Ambassador Mažeiks. Very tangible progress on accession track has been made during the Polish presidency on Albania. So two international governmental conferences in May and June, co-chaired by Poland and the Albanian authorities. And I'm very proud and happy to announce that. I'm very often share this thought with my EU colleagues. It's good that Poland delivered something on Albania, not to be accused of being blind on one eye, seeing only the east and be blind on the south of Europe. So something concrete there. And of course, we all know the kind of deadlock we had over a couple of months on Ukraine, and consequently Moldova, as these two tracks are very closely linked. This blockade, according to the Polish perspective, from the Polish perspective, was absolutely contrary to the security of the whole European Union, and the position of Poland on that was quite clear. Generally, I would return to my very first thought. We see the enlargement in the context of European security. So investing in enlargement from the Warsaw's perspective is something very positive for security of the continent. So maybe the first lessons learned I could point here is quite obvious one, but I think it's important to declare it, that the presidency has to act as an honest broker. So has to act as on behalf of all member states, not presenting positions of its own. But regardless, the deadlock on Ukraine and Moldova, consequently, during the last semesters, I have to report very positive outcomes and results regarding the EU-Moldova relations. I think the growth plan is a great success. In this regard, I do understand, and I do know that this is the Commission portfolio. However, the pace of working on that depended a lot from the presidency's activity. And I have to admit that the Polish one was quite ambitious and active in this regard. We tried to assistance the team of the Moldovan negotiators. There is a quite important project financed by the Polish government focused on training the negotiators. Poland is very interesting partner for Moldovan administration because we still have our negotiators available, alive. So we can invite the representative of the Moldovan administration to Poland, for example, namely to the College of Europe in Atolin, and to contact them with those who were negotiating our treaties 20 years ago. Lessons learned. I would point a couple of them. Because EU enlargement will require new arrangements not only in the financial sphere but also at the institutional level. So maybe the first lessons, the first conclusion or takeaway from the period of Polish presidency, Polish chairmanship in the European Union. The agricultural sector should remain the top priority for EU reform. This is what we all understand. It's absolutely essential for long-term food security and for maintaining public support for enlargement. We need an agricultural policy that sustains food production capacity across all member states. Then the financial impact of enlargement is also very important. The financial impact of enlargement will depend how many countries will join and their size, the timing of accession, and the outcomes of the negotiations. While the next multi-annual financial framework may only see moderate effects, broader financial implication will be felt primarily after the 2034. So my point is that Europeans have to think strategically already now about the next financial perspective. This is the lessons number 2, I see. And first, the third, perhaps the most critical issue, the question of replacing unanimity with the qualified majority voting. This is something that evokes very hot discussions in the European Union and also in my own country domestically. In one of the official policy speeches of my foreign minister, Radosław Sikorski, he voted, actually, he voiced support for ending unanimity on decision on sanctions, regarding sanctions. But still, there is a broader question, there is a question open, should unanimity be replaced? If so, in which policy areas? And actually, this is also a very good question to Moldovans. My question to Moldovans, and we can also discuss this question today, is what is the European Union you want to be a part of? So this debate with the candidates countries is very important for internal debates in the European club. But generally, I've got the feeling after last good, very positive developments from Brussels that we are handing over the Moldovan portfolio to Danes in relatively, not relatively, in a good shape, in good state of play. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. Yasmin, of course, Ambassador, helped me to transition to my next question to you. We know that presidencies function in trios. Definitely, we would expect a continuity of the effort done during the Polish presidency. But I'd like to ask you to dwell a bit on the priorities for Denmark in the next semester. On the enlargement, because we know that the Council has a role in the advancing enlargement process and negotiations, announcement of and organizing the intergovernmental conferences. But also I'd like to ask you to talk a bit broader in terms of the priorities, also focusing on Ukraine and also on Western Balkans, please.
Thank you very much. And of course, it is indeed an easier task, continuing the good work that Poland has already done. So thank you very much. Allow me to start by also congratulating you on your 10th anniversary. It's a very significant milestone. 2025 for Denmark is a super year for our diplomacy, we call it. We're not only preparing to assume the presidency of the Council of the European Union, we have also been elected to the UN Security Council, and we also chair the Nordic Baltic 8 and the Arctic Council. And it's an extraordinary task for such a small country as Denmark, but we're not new to this. Our first EU presidency started in July 1973, only 6 months after our membership. In 2022, it was only under the Danish presidency that the accession negotiations were successfully concluded, with 10 candidate countries ahead of the largest EU enlargement. It was also during the Danish presidency that the main criteria for becoming an EU member were defined, since then known as the Copenhagen criteria. So holding the EU presidency is not about promoting Denmark and Danish national interest. The presidency has to act as a neutral and honest broker, able to find common grounds and bridge differences amongst all 27 member states to create results. Here, we must use the tools that are available, whether it is informal meetings or the highest level of negotiations. But the world has changed since Denmark last held the presidency in 2012. Russia's aggression against Ukraine means there is real security threat to both the EU and our partners, not at least to a country like Ukraine, but also Moldova. At the same time, global trade, the backbone of our wealth and economic progress, is being challenged. And finally, climate change continues to be a threat to our livelihoods. To try to address these new challenges, the Danish presidency will have two main priorities. One is a new and secure Europe, and number two is a competitive and green Europe. A secure Europe means many things. It includes a stronger defense, continuous support for Ukraine, democratic resilience, and certainly merit-based enlargement. Further enlargement is the only way for the EU to stabilize our continent and to strengthen the resilience of countries vulnerable to unwanted external influence. While Ukraine in many ways is the engine for the momentum, the Danish presidency will work ambitiously to advance the enlargement negotiations with Moldova and with the Western Balkans as well. We will also work on preparing the EU for enlargement through internal reforms while upholding the European values and rule of law. A competitive and green Europe, it means less burden on businesses, citizens and public authorities, more trade agreements and economic partnerships, and a stronger harmonized financial market. But it also means picking up the pace of green transition, breaking off the dependency on Russian energy, and focusing on renewables instead, and importantly, agreeing on 2040 climate target. Obtaining a more secure Europe through ambitious enlargement is only possible with wide domestic consensus in member states. I'm happy to say that there is such consensus in Denmark. A strong and united Europe is currently set out in the European Policy Agreement concluded by 8 leading Danish parties. They believe that enlargement is in the interest of Denmark and in the interest of the EU. And if the EU does not step up, others will. So as I already said, the EU membership criteria, the so-called Copenhagen criteria, they must be met. The accession bar must not be lowered, but the EU and member states will help our neighbors meet these criteria. Denmark is committed to support Moldova, just like it supported countries like the Baltics and Poland in the 1990s. So, in order to help sustain the momentum on Moldova's accession chapters on the fundamentals, we are actively supporting human rights, rule of law, and democracy initiatives through our partners in Moldova. We also believe that a vibrant civil society is essential for cohesion, so we promote inclusion of youth and women and a broader participation of the non-governmental sector in general. We're continuously expanding our support to independent media, whose role cannot be underestimated in Moldova, facing huge foreign interference attempts of elections. And finally, negotiations require from Moldova a stronger administrative capacity. Denmark supports the capacity building of public officials to achieve the EU standards. This is a part of our Copenhagen pre-accession instrument for Ukraine and Moldova, launched by our Minister of Foreign Affairs last year. So, dear partners, 2025 is a challenging year. Important elections are ahead of Moldova. Denmark stands by Moldova in better delivering what Moldovans expect and deserve: better justice, more transparency, respect for human rights and freedoms, and economic growth. This will allow the citizens to feel the full benefits of European integration. Denmark is here as a trusted and reliable partner. As the presidency, we will work to pave the way for you, to help you achieve your European aspirations, but getting there is, in the final instance, up to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yasmin. Now let me turn to our community, the think tank community. And we have Kari here. Based on your analysis and findings, what's your opinion? Are we doing enough as think tanks, as civil society across Europe and in the region to support the reform agenda, to put pressure on governments, to work with governments in the EU, in our candidate countries? Yeah, what you would suggest in terms of the priorities, but also as you had led for some time also the Eastern Partnership Index work. If you want also at the end also you can refer to that, but first, what about the think tanks? Are we doing enough?
Yeah, so kind of speaking in one of my roles, which is the editor of the, and it's fresh from the press right here, Eastern Partnership Index. It's big, and important and has a lot of important and very rich data, which, as was mentioned here, it's really a nice complement to the EU's own reporting on enlargement and national reporting as well. So it's definitely worth a read. So I'll kind of reverse what I was going to talk about in terms of what more can think tanks be doing. Well, I think first and foremost in the Eastern Partnership region, but looking beyond that, publications and efforts like the Index are really important because they create a real community of practice amongst think tankers and academics and people working in civil society organisations. But of course it can go a lot further, and it has to go a lot further. The brisk and quick tempo of the EU enlargement process means that I think as think tankers and CSOs, we have to rethink our modalities to make ourselves a lot more relevant and not just following policy, but as someone said this morning, it's about leading and being at the forefront of ideas rather than waiting and critiquing and following what the politicians or the diplomats are doing. So there's a role there. And through doing the Index, but thinking more broadly about my own experience as an academic in Natolin and other places as well, is, you know, what can really be done. And I think the first point is really, you know, recognizing and tackling the fact that think tanks can often exist in very disparate worlds. They're often very national. And I think there's a really strong need to think above that and to create networks of think tanks, not just across the Eastern Partnership region, but including the Western Balkans as well. There's a very large number of countries which resembles the run-up to 2004 enlargement, which I think calls for the need to do intra-regional but inter-regional think tanking as well. So work with Western Balkans think tanks and think beyond your immediate region. And I think that can lead to a really strong community of practice within and amongst the think tank communities. I think another important area, and I know that Dorina and others are doing that here, is to work with the diaspora communities outside. And that means also, I think, teaming up with academics. It means teaming up with trade unions, SMEs, entrepreneurs, to really work with groups that are like-minded but might not be obvious partners, but are in the frame of European integration, I think, similar thinkers as think tanks in the region. So as well as working with the Western Balkans candidate countries, don't forget to include Georgia and Armenia as well, which is very much on a similar kind of tailcoat of EU enlargement. I think another area in which think tanks should be considering working on is going beyond the typical cluster one areas of democracy and human rights and rule of law. Of course, that's very, very important. But I think there's a whole missing debate in amongst think tanks that needs to be refocused upon, and we might call it the less visible areas, things like transport, the grey economy, AI and democracy, equality councils, and they're equally important parts of the EU acquis and have to be adjusted to. And I think there's a lack of debate about those issues, there's a lack of constructive thinking, and I think that's where think tanks could play a slightly larger role. I believe as well, and this again came out through the Index work, I know that you're very good as well in producing shadow reports on EU enlargement. I think there are plenty of think tanks that could be contributing to those shadow reports, whether they're on clusters, whether they're on enlargement in general, and to make sure those reports are very timely, that perhaps they even supersede the EU's own reporting, and that these are more widely disseminated than they currently are. Maybe a final point, and again it's from the Index experience, I think that think tanks have a larger responsibility than they perhaps currently embrace in really making sure that the enlargement process is led or at least includes a strong kind of gender or inclusion lens to the process. We know that EU enlargement, based upon the 2004 experience, has huge gendered implications, and I think that think tanks are in a really good position to make sure that that lens is applied consistently and fully. Final point on what think tanks could be doing more is to invest in the successor generation of think tankers, to make sure the people who are going to be the first-time voters when Moldova is about to join the EU in hopefully just a few years are fully on board and included in the agendas of think tanks as they move forwards. They're my probably quite broad and quite generalized bits of advice or recommendations. I can say some more about the index later if you would like me to. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie. Katarina, you have been an activist. You also are a very good policy expert in foreign policy. You had also worked in EU institutions. Against the backdrop of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, we have seen that Ukraine managed to not only to resist but also to enlarge the shield of protection to the whole Europe against Russia's aggression. But at the same time, Ukraine has managed to advance also very well in the accession process. And we know that there are very many challenges ahead. I'd like to hear from you, how do you see the enlargement process going from now on? There is a momentum, there is an opportunity, very important decisions made yesterday in the European Council. How you see Ukraine will prioritize the work, and how do you see the work of Ukraine with Moldova and Western Balkans in this more regional context to advance the enlargement in our countries?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to join congratulations to IPRE and also to thank for this invitation. It's an honor to be present here in such a distinguished panel. And of course, it's a Friday afternoon, summer, and we see so many people present in the room, which means that this topic is indeed on time and it is very, very important. On my way here, I was thinking that June is a very significant month for the integration of both countries, Ukraine and Moldova. It was mentioned in the opening remarks, keynote speech, that on June 23rd, 2022, the strategic decision was taken. Ukraine and Moldova entered a new political reality. That was a historic step. We were offered candidate status. It was a moment of hope, but it's also translated into the real political commitment. And then 2 years later, on June 25th, 2024, we were opening accession negotiations. Of course, we hoped as well that this June, on these days, will bring us opening of the first clusters. Nevertheless, the conclusions of the Council were very positive. For Ukraine, it is 26 countries, but they clearly said that from the technical point of view, Ukraine is moving very well, especially taking into account the war ongoing efforts. But we are ready to open the first clusters, and we are working also further on the second and third cluster. But taking one step back, actually, for me as Ukrainian and for many Ukrainians, the fight for the European integration, it started 11 years ago. On Maidan. There we made a very clear civilizational choice. Choice for values, choice for freedom, choice for the future with Europe. And it was not just symbolic choice. It was existential choice for us, but also very, very clear signal to Moscow, to this imperialistic Russian regime, that it is possible to decouple from Soviet Union background. It is possible to choose a free path, independent, democratic way of building the country. Of course, they doesn't like that. That is why we have what we have now, the full-scale aggression on the Ukrainian soil. Similarly here, everyday hybrid attacks on Moldova. And I think it's very important to understand this is not just attacks on our countries. This is attacks on the very idea of Europe as such. which puts enlargement in a bit different context. I think if we see the methodology as such, the preparation of clusters, the documents, the technical side of the process, nothing has changed much over the years. And the strategic value of the enlargement has changed. We have a very strong security dimension right now. We understand that from the soft tool, soft policy of the European Union, which the instrument of enlargement was initially designed as, now we come to the enlargement as a strategic necessity, basically as the front line of the democratic resilience. And Ukrainians are holding this front line every single day. So for us, of course, when we think about the further progress, the next steps, the open of the clusters, we always think from very simple perspective that we live under missiles and ballistic missiles, rockets, Shaheds for 1,219 days now. So for us, the question of moving forward is the question of trust to the European Union. It is the question of justice as well, very much. We learned a very, I think, good lesson from 2014, that hesitation opens a room for aggression. Simple as that. When there are gray zones, some vacuums, when there is no strategic policy, no clear guidelines, it invites Russian aggression to come further. In this context, of course, every time we have a political obstacle in some member states or in Brussels and in other challenges we fear, it weakens not only us as countries, it weakens now the strategic sovereignty of Europe. Because countries are watching, because in this very changing geopolitical landscape, we know that it's not only Russia. Russia is not acting alone. We have China, Iran, North Korea, who are enabling now Russian aggression in Ukraine. So it is not just about our ambition or our enthusiasm to enter the European Union, but it's about creating our common security and supporting this unity within the project Europe. So, of course, we understand that it's very ambitious, but the price of ambition is less than the price of hesitation. We also learned it very much that something that was a dream for us many years ago to enter the European Europe, with the help of our ambition and the full mobilization of society, it led us to where we are. And again, report from yesterday from the Council regarding both countries showed a very tremendous progress across all the clusters. And I think it's unprecedented, having in mind that we are constantly living under physical threats, hybrid threats, in all this very difficult environment. So these reforms, they are a momentum. It's very important steps now. And I think if you ask Ukrainians right now, what is enlargement? They will say three things. First, security. Second, prosperity. Third, reforms. Because we understand this in a very complex, we know that without reforms in rule of law, in anti-corruption, strong justice system, it is also not the way how we want to enter European Union, because it's not just about commitment, it's about real results. It's a merit-based process, and we are working on this process every single day. So we are a part of this effort, and of course, working with Moldova together, it brings a lot of synergy, a lot of help. It is not just on the technical level, although we had meetings, we discussed that a lot of going on in synchronizing efforts and working together toward implementation of the directives, transposition of certain acquis. But it's not just about this technical work. It's also about real unity. It's about Moldova, who hosts a lot of Ukrainians here, for what we are really grateful, being a second home for Ukrainians here. It's about understanding that security of Ukraine is not possible without the security of Moldova and democratic Moldova, pro-European Moldova. So it is on the level when we are a team. And we want to work together further, of course, to fulfill all the conditions and to deliver on our homework, which actually would be not possible if Poland would be not helping us in terms of presidency and supporting us in our advancement. As I mentioned, we are fully ready with 3 clusters, and we will be ready to open all clusters very, very soon. The works are ongoing. And in this case, of course, we hope for a political solution. We look into Danish presidency as a really optimistic, in a way, fresh start, but continuing all the important steps and policies. We really hope that these doors will be fully unlocked, and then we can proceed, and hopefully before next June we can open clusters. We are very optimistic on that. we are, of course, continuing doing also our own tasks on the ground. Maybe last concluding remark is just to come to the bigger picture, why we are doing this. I always think that enlargement is not just the set of directives, of the norms, of the reforms, acquis, which we need to transposition. It's about Project European Union. It's about hearts and minds of people, which we have here in Moldova, which we also have in Ukraine, but which we also must sustain. And for this, we really need to show tangible results of this integration, real results on the ground. Ukrainian hearts, they're always with Europe. We went through revolution, then through war, bombs, blackouts in winter, many bad things. But our attitude and hope towards Europe even growing and increasing every day. So it makes us even stronger because we understand that with Europe we actually can be secure, we can be united and prepared for the challenges which we may face. So I very much hope that there will be no more question in the room if Ukraine and Moldova are ready for the enlargement and for the accession. There will be question if European Union is ready to accept us, to be together with us partners, one family, and to make each other stronger.
Thank you, Katerina, for this very smart overview. Very to the point, and I'm also looking forward for debates in the room and the questions. But before that, I'd like to turn to Drita, a good friend of Moldova, and a bridge, one of the bridges we have with Western Balkans. Moldova has been bridging for some time with Western Balkans through the window, I would say. I remember when we joined Stability Pact, then the Regional Cooperation Council, hoping that that would bring us closer to the perspective to join the EU. Well, it wasn't the case. It was the war that Russia waged against Ukraine that changed the perspectives of EU leaders to open the enlargement and to resume enlargement energy also with the Western Balkan countries. And we have seen over the last 3 years a lot of advancement and very ambitious targets for the years to come for newcomers to join the EU. So Drita, from this perspective, I'd like to ask you more to refer to the Western Balkans, to bring these countries in the room and also to see where we can work together on top of what we already do.
Thank you. I will start with a wise man once said, there are no shortcuts to any place worth going. Us from the Western Balkans, embarking in this journey for quite some time, we say, and the road keeps getting new roundabouts. But good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation, Julian. It's a real honor to be part of this distinguished panel, especially in this decisive phase for Moldova and Ukraine. We discussed, I can share and discuss some of the challenges that we had and what might be added as an added value to help or to, in a way, guide Moldova and Ukraine, at least not to make the same mistakes that we made. So the truth is that enlargement is never straightforward. Either is geopolitical context, internal reforms, EU's evolving enlargement process, and makes it a bit difficult to apply, lessons learned approach. But there are some fundamental truths that are constant and never changed, and all of our previous speakers, in one way or another, they mentioned them. So I would maybe start with the enlargement challenges that the Western Balkan countries faced. Some of them were similar, some different, but I chose a few that really had influence in the process. And this is the first one, I would say, lack of political credibility at times and clarity in EU's commitment to enlargement, which undermined the momentum and the public trust. Then there were administrative capacity gaps for the candidate countries to cope with all the tasks and reforms. internal EU dynamics, where some member states applied bilateral or domestic filters to enlargement decisions, complicating what should be a merit-based process. Communication and consensus building, both in candidate countries, but also within the EU institutions. Often, when they fall short, they lead to fragmented narrative and lower support. But to be quite honest, the biggest hurdles were internal reforms. So candidate countries often struggled with reform implementation in some key areas and critical areas, such as rule of law and judicial independence, public administration reform, anti-corruption measures, economic governance, and others. But despite all the challenges, there are valuable takeaways, and we can work together, and we are already doing. There are already, let's say, formal steps. There are memorandums of understanding signed between Moldova and Albania and North Macedonia, Montenegro. The same Ukraine has signed memorandum of understanding with Albania and North Macedonia, and of course we can work together, because despite of the fact that the journey for us was longer than expected, longer than we hoped, we did learn a lot, and we were in the processes where we actually did an actual work in terms of alignment. From our experience, though, I would like to share a few reflections that might be helpful. And I think the most important element is knowing that the EU accession process is as much political as it is technical. So you cannot divide it. It goes hand in hand. And this has to be something that we all understand clearly. The rules will not change. They will not be softer. We just have to apply. So then the first would be that political will is really essential. It's the real driver. But it needs structure behind. So in order to do reforms, you need to have a clear plan, but also skilled teams and coordination among institutions in order for things to move forward. It's not just enough to say the right things in Brussels. We have to show what we're doing at home in real time for us, not for Brussels. The second is, I have to come back to this, it was a lesson. Diplomacy matters more than ever. In the Western Balkans, we learned it the hard way that sometimes unsolved issues, whether they are political, historical, can slow down the whole process. And what is important is to identify potential diplomatic obstacles and work proactively. Do not wait for the problem to escalate. So this would be one of, how can I say, let's say, reflections that might be useful. And to understand that being ready, it's not just about meeting the EU criteria. It's actually also managing European politics. The third would be to invest in people. One of the smartest things we did back then with the big enthusiasm is that we trained a generation of experts on EU law, public policy, and those became the backbone of our accession efforts. And this is very important for both countries to do, and I think both countries are already doing those efforts. And the fourth would be to bring everyone on board. And this is also to reiterate what the previous speakers mentioned, but really to go deep into this, how important this is. It's not the project of the government. I mean, if the reforms feel like are reforms of the ministries and the reports of Brussels, people will lose interest. But if these reforms translate into good services, cleaner water, better schools, citizens will start defending these processes themselves. So it is very important to communicate clearly, including with rural communities, small businesses, young people, and very important element, a backbone, of the bridge, actually, Julian, of this process is the civil society. It's the bridge and it's the communicator before the overburdened administration doing their daily task with the citizen. The civil society should not be treated as observer, but as a real partner in this process. So finally, also, EU must play its role as well. By the way, it's much easier where I'm not, I'm former, I'm not a present. It must stay fair and support reforms with resources and guidance. I mean, for the candidate countries, and keep its promises. Because when countries like Moldova and Ukraine do the work, EU needs to recognize it, not just with words, but steps that move things forward. As we mentioned journeys, I hope, but not hope, I actually expect that North Macedonia, Albania, and Montenegro will be very soon full members of the European Union. Their efforts, even though tested and delayed for various reasons that I mentioned, either internal or external, have laid a foundation that deserves to be rewarded. And their success, the success of the Western Balkan countries, will validate the enlargement process as well, and will strengthen the European project as a whole. So to all of us, the path may still be long, but if we stay at course, trust our compass, have the full support from EU, this is doable even in the goal set by us and welcomed by EU, which is 2030. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Adrita. With this, we are concluding these intro remarks, which provided us a good overview from a political steering discussion to a more experience sharing point of view coming from you. Now I'd like to turn to our audience, colleagues, friends who are in the room. Please, I think we'll have some rounds, so we can pick 2-3 questions in round. Who wants to make a comment, statement, or address a question to our panelists? Please introduce yourself. Raise your hand, introduce yourself, and put a question. My colleagues will help with the mics. If not, I'll come back to you. Thank you. Who is willing to break the ice? Yeah? Okay, so Vitaly, Dorina. I'll come back with the mic.
Thank you so much. My name is Vitaly Rabcha. I'm from Expert Group. Actually, with Julian, we are implementing a very interesting project. It's connected with European Union because it also is financed by the European Union. But Drita has mentioned something very important. So the ownership of the European integration endeavor has to be translated from the government to the people. And it's easy to do that within the framework of this project, consolidating the consumer protection framework in Moldova, because everyone is a consumer. So consumers can see that their rights are respected in Moldova, just like the rights of consumers in the European Union. And this is how they can see that Europe is actually closer. And now the fact is that we don't necessarily see that happening at the central level. So basically, you mentioned this key point that the central government should attempt to actually do that, to translate the European endeavor more to the people and to make people to see the outcomes of the European integration. Maybe you guys can advise to the government, how can they more efficiently do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Vitaly. Dorina?
Dorina Baltag, researcher, Institute for Diplomacy and International Affairs, London. Thank you so much for your interventions. I think I would like to ask 2 questions. I want to ask maybe almost everyone touched upon societal polarization, and this is where the bottleneck is, and this is where the hybrid war is also taking place. So from here till elections in Moldova, what can be done and what should be prioritized? I know there is no blueprint or magic pill, but maybe carry from the perspective of Eastern Partnership. You mentioned Georgia previously. Maybe we could see from the Ukrainian perspective, what would that be from the North Macedonian one? Clearly from the Polish perspective, because that's also the case. And maybe in Denmark, where the public trust is so close, like similar to the Netherlands, for example, where I reside, what can we learn from there and can be transferred to the Moldovan society? And for His Excellency, the Ambassador of the EU, question of a different nature. Let's imagine we are immediately post-elections, but the results of the elections is not in an optimistic perspective, but rather in a pessimistic vein. So let's say the center and center-right does not get the simple majority. What type of tools and instruments does the EU already thinking about to work with the new parliament and the respective government, or not to work? Thank you.
Thank you, Dorina. We can take one more question in the room. If not, we'll limit to these 3. So one on consumer protection, how to transfer the policy into real-life perspective for the citizens, on polarization for everyone, and how we can apply your lessons. And Ambassador, on the post-election scenario in Moldova. So who would like to start? Maybe Drita, please.
Thank you very much. Actually, if I correctly understood the question, you said it's easier to translate, for example, projects like consumer protection because people can feel the benefits. How do you communicate other things? First of all, I have to say, in my experience, almost a year here, how the process was conducted, actually, it was in a very transparent manner. All documents were publicly consulted. It's a process. How to communicate, and as I said, the bridge is definitely the civil societies. How to communicate is actually also, you need to target different audiences, because it's not really easy. Spreading disinformation is easy. I always say selling EU values, it has always been so hard to translate. And I know lately we joined efforts, for example, also in North Macedonia with the delegation to promote what exactly EU means and what this support means, because sometimes it's amazing how uninformed the general public is, because it's also difficult to communicate this. But keeping an open dialogue between the public institutions, the government, the civil society, and all actors, especially I always insist that local communities or local self-governments are a very important element of this, and having them understand what this means is very important. But also you need to understand that it takes time to build this culture of communication, or the capacity of people to absorb what EU means, that it's not only words, because all the reforms that we are doing, and of course we are very thankful for that, are supported with resources from the EU. And it's true, it is the job of the government to communicate this, but also of the civil society and all actors and to the mass media. But in terms of openness, at least in my recent experience here, I think the government has been very open to communicate every step. But then some processes are really too technical, like, for example, the screening process, which takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, but it's difficult to communicate this at this time. But if you just allow me here, it just reminds me of something that I always think, and I will use the opportunity here to say, and it goes for both public administration, so just public servants of Moldova and Ukraine with whom I had the pleasure to work for 1 year. I was amazed how, without applause, without the spotlight, without recognition, they showed up every day, did this work, until one day the results speak so loud nobody can ignore. And the results are the results of yesterday, and hopefully in the days to come we'll have even better news. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to add a few words on reforms as well, because I think over the years we witnessed a very important transformation. We came from the point of reforms done under pressure to reforms as a policy of choice. Basically, the reforms which are driving a sustainable and lasting change. And of course, more than 86% of Ukrainians, they support integration, they understand reforms. As I mentioned in these 3 points about integration, reforms are initial and essential part, especially in the cluster fundamentals, because every Ukrainian wants to live in the just society, free from corruption, with the very clear administrative procedures and a very strong governmental institutions. So it is a directly demand from the society, and we do not have to persuade our society that reforms are needed. Although, of course, when it comes to the technicalities of the screening process, of complexity, we have to do a better job in explaining, communicating, especially in the regions, because the regions have less access to the information, including English language resources. So better job should be done in bringing regions closer to the European integration agenda in this sense. And of course, it's much easier done when we have step-by-step positive signals coming from European Union. It's much easier to explain the soldier on the front line why we have to do this or this reform when we actually have a step forward and we actually have a result. What could be done before elections? Well, I think we need to win communication battle. This is also about, as I mentioned, winning hearts and minds. We learned from the very beginning of the full-scale invasion that is a lot about communication, because Russia tried to totally destabilize a situation with various of messages, with hybrid attacks, everything coming on simultaneously from many channels. So we had the simultaneous cyber attacks, and then also messages via informal channels, social media, bloggers who transmitted the messages, as well as physical attacks. So we should be ready that the challenge will come not only from the one side, it will come simultaneously from all sides. And the lesson from Ukraine, I guess, is that we were not only relying on the center, on the central authorities or one institution, we were preparing our regions as well, regional authorities, to be, to a certain degree, autonomous in tackling these challenges. So in the first 24 hours, when everything was very hectic and the connection was a problem, internet was a problem, we also relied very much on our communities who hold this front line and who already received certain guidance how to act in this or that situation. So communication is extremely important. Of course, the visits of people from the European Union, from member states, because this is a direct contact when they come to smaller cities, not only capital, when they talk about European integration, it works much better than just transmitting the signals. It also works well for us now in times of war, when we actually try to facilitate exchanges between different stakeholders, bring them to Ukraine, show them the progress on the ground. Also in the sense that they transmit these messages back. Because while we are fighting here internally for the changes, we also need to win hearts and minds of Europeans. Because it's not just about institutions or politicians supporting integration, it's about societies, it's about simple member of any country in the European Union who needs to understand why we are important for them. So channeling this back and basically securing support also and better understanding where we stand in terms of integration as Moldova and Ukraine together, and also other countries as well.
Thank you. Gary?
Okay, I'll give a kind of rather short answer to kind of both questions, which I think are very much interlinked. I think it's about investing in building trust in public institutions, whether that's local councils, local authorities or central government. I think efforts from both sides, from CSOs, think tanks and from the EU and other donors should really work out how to build trust, how to nurture trust from the side of citizens. I think it's also about supporting accountability structures and accountability agents. So, for example, one thing we found year on year with the index is that, okay, you have parliaments, you have all the infrastructure there, but, for example, parliamentary committees do not work very well, and they should be one of the first kind of checks and balances on EU policy making, EU reforms rather, in the candidate countries. So I think it's about trust, about tangible results. You mentioned consumer protections, connectivity, having better roads, having better bus services, having better train services can all kind of come about and be improved through European integration. So it's about, as you said, you know, it's about having tangible gains that mean something to people's everyday lives. And that's something we didn't have in the Brexit vote, any focus upon these public trust and tangible benefits of EU integration. So I know that without those, it doesn't work.
Thank you. Pastor?
Thank you. I'll try to address all three elements, but perhaps in the reverse order. First, on the communications on EU benefits. My experience is that we are quite good at communicating with the minds, not so much with the hearts. And for the opposition, it's the other way around, because for us, we are factual people, and we don't engage in disinformation, and disinformation can be emotional, and we are staying factual. And frankly, for one of my favorite characters, the Granny in Belts, 10 millions versus 100 million euros, there is no difference. It's not 10 times more. It's lots of money versus lots of money. So I think it is just also translating what we are doing also in a more humane, a more emotional way. And there are limits to that. It's not that always there is shortage of information. I saw this with Ilya Varlamov's video from Gagauzia, where one of his interviewees was saying that, of course, EU is giving money to renovate schools and to build roads, but why don't they do something for the people? So she's obviously not informed about what the EU is doing, but for her the issue is there. But I think sometimes we can also communicate facts also differently. Like, for instance, the people are still upset about corruption in the country, but then that is a rather narrow focus on the judiciary. Whereas we have success stories in the labor inspection, where in the past it was a very corrupt institution. Now they have the video cameras on them, so the possibilities for corruption are very much limited, and the output of the labor inspection has increased dramatically. Getting to the question on what happens in a negative scenario of elections. Well, we have had a situation in the past when it was not possible to cooperate with the government, and that's when our cooperation in the Republic of Moldova was limited to support with civil society, with independent media and so on. So, of course, we're hoping that's not going to be the case, but also in the growth plan, which has been alluded to a couple of times, so 1.9 billion euros, so very significant tool for Moldova's economic development. It also has 153 reform steps, and each of them is also linked to a deadline and also to a disbursal sum. In other words, if a particular reform is not implemented, then that sum would not be disbursed. And I think that is also a response to what would happen in a non-reformist government. Finally, on the polarization, I think there's short-term and long-term answers. In the short term, the only thing I can see is exposing the polarizers, because everybody has their own social media bubble, but bringing out the fact that like there has been very recently the exposure of Matryoshka network, which is already putting out deep fakes about Moldova. I think that is what can be done in the short term. But there are things that perhaps is worth considering for the next government for the longer term, because in the Baltic states, when they were in the process of accession. There was also discussions about polarization, about the people who were not speaking the official language, the citizenship issues, and then the government initiated a broad discussion how to integrate the society, and it turned out that it's not only these issues, but it's also about the inclusion of disabled people, it's about the differences between rural and urban parts of the country. It's also about inclusion of diaspora, and I think these are all elements that might be relevant also for Republic of Moldova. So perhaps, and in the case of the Baltic states, then there were programs put in place to work in all these aspects of reducing the polarization of the society or reducing its fragmentation, and these are still in place now, so perhaps this is one of the directions for a longer time.
Thank you. Thomas.
Poland was mentioned in the question about polarization, and I think thanks for that, because actually I think that the country I come from is very case to study. It turned out that the society in Poland is quite polarized. Last presidential elections let's reveal that there are two narratives, but still I do believe that it's the crucial thing is to, and this is huge obligation and responsibility of the leaders of the country, to identify the essence of the existence of the country and the society. In Polish case, this is the security policy. There are different narratives of in the public debate, the progressive, liberal one, but security policy of my country is not an outcome of the parliamentarian debates of last couple of years, last term, even last decades. It's an outcome of the couple of centuries of Polish history. So, but again, it's a huge obligation of the leaders try to identify what's absolutely crucial and try to unite the society around these fundamentals. I know that it's maybe too philosophical response to the question, but each policy has to be built on the very well-established philosophical fundamentals, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin.
Yeah, I think I will start by addressing the questions to Denmark. Denmark does have a very high level of public trust. We have always had this. We rate very high in anti-corruption indexes as the least corrupt country in the world. And there are many technical reasons for this, and they include some of the things that has already been mentioned. I have personally worked on anti-corruption reforms in many countries from Denmark, and there will be some different schools of thoughts. So there will be the people who always say that it's highly connected to culture, it's highly connected to history of the country, the bureaucracy, how it's built. And that, we have some problems with that in Denmark, because that would entail that Danish people are just fundamentally less corrupt than Moldova people. And that's not true. It's not a personality trait. Social science will say again and again that it's human nature to take the easy way. What person would not take the easy way? And if everybody does that in a society, society collapses. That's not how we work. So the boring answer is that it is about bureaucracy. It is about systems. And the one lesson learned based on all the technical aspects in Denmark is transparency. So transparency, transparency, transparency in decision making, in selection processes, in all of this. This is what creates the public trust in Denmark for sure. So yeah, allow me to highlight that. On the first question, I think it's really interesting for the formulation, also what Moldova can do about central issues in the EU, because that is inherently not Moldova's responsibility. It is up to member states to reform the system so that it is merit-based enlargement, for instance. I was really inspired by the comments of our North Macedonian colleague, because of course politics is everywhere, and Denmark is not going to change that during our presidency. But enlargement must be merit-based. It should be merit-based, and there's no excuse for it not being like this. So this is definitely something we'll continue to work for. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yasmin. Now I'd like to turn back to the audience. Natalia.
Есть, да? Thank you. Natalia Sterko, Foreign Policy Association of the Republic of Moldova. My question is about the financial impact of enlargement. You mentioned about the new financial perspective. My question is about risks from financial point of view, about the balance between costs and benefits. And maybe it would be very interesting in this sense, Polish experience. What can you say about the cost and benefits, and maybe about the vision of the member states in this sense, what they think regarding the potential of such countries like as Moldova, and really benefits at cost such countries which are part of the EU not so long time. Many thanks.
Thank you. Costs and benefits. Next. Yeah, please. Anastasia. It's great that you know all the audience, I mean, majority of the people by name, so it's very easy to moderate. Anastasia, please.
Thank you very much for your input in the panel. I have a question perhaps to Mr. Ambassador on Transnistria, and I'd like the other panelists as well to elaborate a bit more. How do you see the future of Moldova's EU integration together with Transnistria's reintegration, and what do you see should be the first steps, how to move ahead with the process? Or not the first, maybe the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you. The elephant in the room. The third question, Juan? Who else? Okay, then we'll come back. Who wants to take the first question, maybe Ambassador, on costs and benefits?
Yes, I think again I was pointed because I mentioned the financial impact of the enlargement in my initial intervention, and my answer is quite simple. The mature European politicians and societies understand that the enlargement will cost. And this is something European Union has to pay, because the enlargement, and I'm coming back to my initial thought, enlargement is in the deepest strategic interest of European members. Security is costly, so that's why there are some costs that have to be. At some point, the current candidates will contribute to the European Union budgets properly, and this is investment actually, and let's treat the cost that has to be covered in this way. I'm already having the microphone. I can turn to Transnistria, because there are some signals from the EU institutions that the Brussels actually can imagine integration of Moldova without Transnistrian issue fully settled. It's not for me to maybe comment that and go into details, because this is actually very sensitive domestic issue for Republic of Moldova. But my thought is, and let us remember that Germany joined NATO being completely divided, not having the borders fully clarified. So if there is a political will, everything is possible.
Thank you, Ambassador. Who wants? Yanis, please.
Yes, okay, I perhaps will comment to both, also to complement what Tomasz already said about the costs. Yes, there will be costs, but that's also the philosophy of the European Union also after the enlargement, because let's remember the way how the structural funds of the European Union work, that those regions of the EU that are less developed receive more funding. And that works, because that's very easy to see in the statistics of the past 20 years, that countries that at the beginning of their accession path were, like Moldova now is at 33% of the average of the EU GDP, now are somewhere between 75 to perhaps 95% of the average of the EU. In other words, this has made them more prosperous, and of course that also means that they have become a better market for everybody else, because they are richer. So these investments also have made the whole European Union more prosperous. On Transnistria, well, I will start with the answer that we always have. That has not changed. That our preference is to have the Republic of Moldova join the European Union when the reintegration has already happened, but we're not going to hold the country hostage to this. So, in other words, we are not excluding the possibility that the right bank would be joining first and the left bank later. How this will work out, that's also we still have some years ahead of us, because the negotiation process is going to start now in depth. And of course, I think that as Republic of Moldova becomes more resilient, more prosperous, it will also be more attractive to the left bank, which already has been shown, I think, this year, the dynamics of the energy crisis. If that energy crisis had happened 3 years ago, well, the right bank would have been in the same situation as the left bank was in January. With the US assistance, the systems for the purchasing energy have been developed in the Republic of Moldova. There is the knowledge how to buy gas on the European markets. There is possibilities to do that. There's legislation in place. There is financial resources. In other words, already now the situation on the right bank and the left bank in this particular aspect already has changed, and I think that's going to also happen in the future, that as Republic of Moldova advances more on the European Union path, it will also be more attractive to the right bank, left bank stream.
Thank you, Mr. Rita, would like to, Ekaterina, Kerry?
Well, maybe just shortly add, without entering into the details of the domestic issue, what I would say is, while I discussed about the bureaucratic or the stalling or the dragging of the process, one thing we also learned during the years is that the European Union can be very creative in finding solutions. So I would count on that creativity. Thank you.
Just very briefly regarding cost, of course, as Ukrainian, we pay the highest price. Our cost is lives, many lives, every day, young people, my friends. It's very hard to watch the price we actually pay, but there should be a cost foreseen in the EU instruments. It's of course an investment. We know that Ukraine has a lot of offer. We have potential in many areas, even in the agriculture, which is a complicated topic, but we witnessed that the countries who integrated earlier, they actually found a compromise, a solution, and then they boosted the competitiveness of the union as such. So especially with the new dimension of the defense union and the possibilities to increase our defense production, to open new areas of cooperation, overcome fragmentation of defense area together. I think Ukraine has a lot of innovations and potential to offer. So indeed, it is costly, but it is an investment. For us now, I think it's important to think how we foresee this budget, these instruments in terms of upcoming European Union budget. The talks are just started now in Brussels. In July, we will have some draft, hopefully. And then there will be, of course, a question how much, how to embed it, which particular instruments. We just really hope that it will be reflected in the future of the European budget, because when we come to the point when we will be ready for the integration and hopefully the door will be open, we of course would be very glad to have a dedicated financial instruments there in place, and knowing how long it takes to agree on EU budget and how complex the process is, we just ask not to forget about us when we discuss this in Brussels as well.
Yeah, I agree with everyone really, and I agree with your point there that the EU has been and can be creative when it absolutely wishes to. And I think the bottom line is that the costs of not enlarging are a great deal bigger than enlarging, whether we're looking at, social development or forget the money. I think that can be sorted out somehow along the way. On Transnistria, that's also a puzzle for me, I would say. The one thing I would think about it historically is, we saw West Germany thrive as a member of NATO, but the European Union, perhaps most importantly, and it became a magnet. It became a rich, wealthy, stable country, and perhaps we can think about Transnistria, Moldova proper in that way, that Moldova, through joining the EU, will become, a magnet, a point of attraction, and therefore ultimately attract somehow Transnistria to Moldova's and EU's orbit generally. But that's probably idealistic and not very well tethered legally, but that's how I try and see it.
Yeah, on Transnistria, I think the EU ambassador has been very clear, and we, of course, stand by this perspective as well. And on cost and benefits, I think, as I said in my opening remarks, enlargement for Denmark is really security. It's about the security of Europe, and as the Polish ambassador also said, you cannot put a price on security. It's the same approach our government has in Ukraine, where we are amongst the biggest bilateral donors per capita. It's costing us a lot of money, but of course there is no budgets, and there is no budgets if we do not. So this will also be the approach of the coming presidency, that security costs, and it should cost, and it will cost, but for very good reasons.
Thank you. I think we have time for at least one more round of questions. Please.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation and the very interesting talk. I'm Catalina, I'm from the Austrian Embassy. I just wanted to reiterate what the EU ambassador said, because maybe I can share some experience from my own country. In the eastern part of Austria, in Burgenland, there was some skepticism in 2004 with the enlargement, also towards the Eastern European countries and Hungary, our neighbor. I think among people it was seen maybe also they were afraid or a bit critical. But what I can say is that after the enlargement, also in the eastern part of Austria and in Burgenland, economy has picked up, and the cost and everything, people have really benefited from the enlargement. So I think that, I just wanted to share that example, because I think, enlargement is, like Jasmine also said, security for Europe and for us all.
Thank you, Catherine. Who else? Victor?
Rule of law is essential for European integration and corruption as well. I'm on a daily basis communication with the community of judges and prosecutors in Moldova, and I'm struggling with the feeling of increasing skepticism amongst them as community and as professionals. I have the feeling that they are lagging behind, much behind, than the politicians and the overall politics towards European integration. We've been doing a lot of chemistry around the judiciary and justice delivery overall. Not sure that very successful so far. Do you have the same feeling and the same in Ukraine, for example? What do the community of judges and prosecutors think about where you are versus when you want them to be? Are they on board? And for Polish parts, I also have the feeling that in Poland you are sliding back in terms of rule of law and judiciary. Any ideas about any shortcuts, and how can we fill this gap between where we are with the European integration process and we want them to be, judiciary and prosecutors? Do you share with me the same feeling that we kind of have different languages, speak different languages with them as community or professionals? At least the situation we have in terms of delivering and cases and important decisions on corruption, we don't see them. So I have the feeling that we have little communication with them. We don't like them, they don't understand this language, the language we're talking here. Any thoughts about that?
Thank you. Who else? Anyone? Yeah, Mikhail.
Thank you. Michał Nesteruk, television, public Polish television in Moldova, Telewizja Polska. My question is for the Polish, Mr. Polish Ambassador, Mr. Kopsday. So, as we know now, the process of negotiations EU and Moldova is very rapid, accelerated, and this acceleration brings with it some danger points, like some points not to be really qualitatively worked and so on and so on. I know that Poland negotiated with the EU for many, many years, and we know that Poland managed to negotiate very well with the EU. So how do you see these potential dangers, and is that in general real in 4 years for Moldova to negotiate so well for us not to have problems in 2029? Thank you.
Thank you. One more? Okay, so I have one, but I will leave it for the next round. Who wants to tackle the issues of bridging the gap between the system and reformists in our countries? Katerina, please.
Ukraine favorite question, very easy to answer. No, I mean, this is the toughest reforms we've ever done. It takes a lot of time. They are not perfect, but we are moving there. The question is that we need a time to clear the system from the old judges we had and with the very bad practices, and to push for the new fresh blood in the system. And we are somewhere in the middle of this process. We already created a certain set of the institutions. We have competitions ongoing. We are selecting a fresh new cohort of judges who are very competent and who can work then later. But of course, it takes time, and sometimes for obvious reasons, because of war, sometimes for artificial challenges, because the old system does not want to let go the positions. So we have, of course, in this regard, a gap between the old system, who very much wants to keep position, and all our joint efforts of civil society, government, international partners, who try to put a new system in place. So sometimes, of course, the people, the fresh blood, they are frustrated maybe with some competitions which go for months, when the decisions are delayed because of certain set of reasons, sometimes not very clear reasons. But in the end, they also understand that it's not very easy to start reforming this system. It's a big challenge for the country in war to undergo through these very difficult reforms. So there is also patience and understanding, if the international partners and communities are supportive, that we understand where we are going. So in this regard, it should not be only the fight of Ukrainian civil society or government, it should be common fight. Because when we receive a very clear set of the conditions by the European Union, the 7 points which were posed in front of us, it was a very clear message what we should do, what we should deliver, and Ukraine did a job. And we need to continue in the same manner. We need to have a very clearly defined set of conditionalities, not only like 500 something particular reforms in the roadmap, but 10. Give us 10. We really delivered well on 7. Give us 10 now where we should do our homework, and it will make easier for us to push for specific reforms, because the sector is very large. It takes time. We need to prioritize. We need to focus. The help of international experts was extremely important for us. It helped to unblock decisions while we were selecting judges, and not only judges. It really helped us to take decisions in the crucial moments. So the international expertise should remain in Ukraine until we are fully ready to act independently. But indeed, we need a transition time for this as well. We cannot just have a gap of capacity. We need to ensure the smooth transition, and then we will be able, hopefully, to do it on our own. And on the language, also my observation is that everybody starts to criticize Ukraine when corruption scandals are exposed. But on my view, this is the mark of the progress. When the corruption scandals are exposed, when they get to the media, when it gets attention, it means the system is working. So this is also another indicator we have, that the cases are moving, that we have several very good investigations. Of course, we cannot say that it is perfect, but I think we are on a very good track, and with the help of the partners, I'm sure that we will be able to progress further, and there is a genuine willingness of people to make it happen. It's not because of money, not because of prestigious position, but there are people who are committed and who even risk their lives to do these investigations, to proceed and to put certain cases against very serious people in Ukraine. So we rely on these people, we rely on this motivation, and we hope that all together with our partners we will be able to proceed even further with this reform, although the results were regarded very well in the conclusions of the Council, where they said that the cluster fundamentals, the first cluster, is completely ready to be opened from the technical point of view.
Ambassador, please.
Okay, well, I will just comment on the Moldovan aspect of it. First, the simple answer, there are no shortcuts. In fact, if anything, Moldova has already been pretty close to a shortcut, but not in a good sense of the word. Sorry, because it's, I will have to leave very soon. Because we can recall that in Albania the vetting took 7 years, and now in Moldova we already have results after 3. I'm not saying that these results are perfect, but it is a success story in the making. What is important is to continue building on this success so that it is a success story. So you asked about the message. Well, my message is the words of one of my favorite poets of the 20th century, Bob Dylan. For the justice professionals, you'd better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, because the times they are changing. And I think that is what is important, because we have seen the first decisions that have been courageous, but it is important that we see more of them, and that's where I hope that we will see the change in the system.
Thank you. Tomasz.
Thank you for the question from Telewizja Polska on the pace of the negotiations and the quality of the negotiations. No, I don't. I'm not an expert on negotiations because it's too sophisticated for my diplomatic head. However, I hear very positive, actually, comments from Brussels regarding the work. Unfortunately, Kristina Gerasimov and her team left, so I cannot praise them publicly. But I understand they are doing a great job, and the pace, the tempo of the negotiations in comparison to the Polish one. But let's look at the scale. So for me, it's quite logical that the small country negotiates faster because it's smaller. I do encourage you, Moldovans, to treat your size as an asset, as an advantage. So it's much easier. Please try to recall the number of the challenges the Polish industry, Polish agriculture sector had 20 years ago. It's relatively simpler nowadays in case of the Republic of Moldova. So let's think very positively about the pace and quality of the Moldovan process.
Ambassador, please. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us. Looking forward to welcoming back. Kerry, please. And then Jasmine, please. Kerry.
Okay, yeah, just very briefly about the point where the judicial system isn't catching up with the politics of the day. Yeah, I agree, as colleagues said, it's about a new generation of legal professionals needing to come through, so we have to wait. It's about systemic change as well. But I think we shouldn't lose sight of the kind of day-to-day working life in the judicial system that could make a real difference. For example, like proper enforceable whistleblower systems, for example, and reinforcing judicial education. I think that means we don't have to wait till that bigger generational change comes about. So those day-to-day procedures can make, I think, a difference about the things you're talking about.
Yes.
No, just very shortly, I think it was such an interesting question, and of course the other candidate countries have really insightful experience here that can be used in Moldova and is being used in Moldova for good reasons. We do not in Denmark have a very recent vetting process or anything we can learn from, but we do have these reforms where of course there is this dichotomy between what the system wants and what the people who are already in the system want. And I was looking for the right words, and maybe the EU ambassador said it more clearly, but in Denmark, we have a problem with somebody being too pedagogical. We really want people to not complain. We want everybody to be happy. We want the process to accommodate all needs. But sometimes it's not what's best for the system. Sometimes we have to be really rough and be like, exactly like you said, but you are following these developments or you will not be in the system. It's not a recommendation. It's just how it has been going in Denmark for sure, because it is a question about how speedy a process it will be in the end unless you do it that way. Thank you.
If I may and try and combine maybe both questions raised. Actually, yes, very interesting but also complicated question. As you might know, working closer in these matters, they are actually interlinked. First, I would like to echo and sign to everything the previous speakers said regarding the judiciary, prosecution and all these systems, but also to maybe connect it a little bit more practical also to the process, actually to keep pace and to move forward. There's a very clear roadmap which needs to be implemented and to build on the already done stuff, because we, I mean, also you do not start from scratch, of course. I mean, reforms are ongoing, but then there's a very clear roadmap on reforms which will have an effect on keeping on not only keeping the pace, but moving forward a bit faster, because those are the pillars, and this is where the society needs to rely for access to justice. And regarding the accession negotiations, while the dear ambassador, of course, they're a member state, and some things are not even good for you, you can't even remember how they were. But in terms of dynamics, with a new methodology, of course, nothing has changed in terms of what you need to fulfill as a negotiating country to become a full member. But actually, there is a new dynamism, and for Moldova, and for the Western Balkans, and for Ukraine, is a time frame. It is possible because we do not negotiate if we're gonna apply those rules. What we negotiated is some time that we might need to implement. Therefore, technically, it is possible, of course, with a great support, and not only the work of the government and the administration, but the great support of the civil society, expertise of the member states, of the European Union, of the Commission. But technically, it is doable. Thank you.
Thank you, Adresa, for that remark. We have time for one more round of questions, please.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm
It works, yes. It works.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Clemens. I'm from Maastricht University in the Netherlands. You mentioned multiple times the issue of threat, whether they are material one or hybrid. Peace, according to Western institutions, can be ensured by diplomatic relations and treaties. However, countries of the BRICS Plus that you mentioned before, or to some extent the United States, is known to consider international treaties and law the same way Europeans do. How to safeguard the accession process of Ukraine and Moldova while they have to face the increasing threat of Russia, knowing traditional diplomatic solutions are insufficient to ensure lasting peace? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Very good question. Who else? Anyone for the final question? Okay, let's answer to this one, and then I will have one more for concluding remarks. Who wants to answer to this difficult question?
Ukraine?
Yes, please.
What to do? Well, it's an existential question for us, of course, and we ourselves think about this every day, because every day we wake up to the news about peace talks, peace negotiations, but every time we ask ourselves question how to sit on the negotiation table if there are missiles, rockets, shaheds and everything flying over this table every day. So in order to be able to negotiate anything, we at least need to stop shelling, and we need a lasting ceasefire ceasefire. This is the very first precondition, which is not happening. So it is very clear now that Putin, Russia doesn't want any peace, and they will continue destabilizing efforts on all fronts because they simply do not show any progress or any willingness to work with us, with international partners in this direction. In these terms, we are keeping being an active front line. So these things are working in Ukraine even worse. The military security situation is worsening every day because in response to the peace efforts of many partners of our Ukrainian commitment that we constantly repeat to stop the fire in Ukraine, we have even more bombs every day. So it does not become better, and it means that we are talking about time, and we are very short on time. And this is where it comes to the enlargement and to the European Union role. First of all, we understand that the enlargement will not also happen overnight. We fully understand about set of conditions we have to implement. And this also means that we need to win this time for Ukraine, which also means that we need to secure Ukraine. So to a big extent now, it depends on how good we can hold the front line, how many resources we can at the same time allocate for reforms and for the integration. So the better equipment Ukraine receives, the better financial support, and being a part of this newly created defense framework, SAFE instrument and others, it is a very important for us. We had hopefully good talk with American administration regarding Patriots. So first question is weapons, and it is defense. Then we can move to the question of implementing reforms coming further to European Union, because it is also having a security dimension. This is from what I started my speech today, that basically it is not just a threat to Ukraine. It is a threat of to the idea of Europe, and we are sure that Russia will come further to the other member states. It will test not only in a hybrid way, but in a very kinetic way, resilience of other countries. It is the matter of time. So we need to act fast. We need to be faster than our enemy. We need to be faster also than this axis of evil, which starts to form between China enabling Russian aggression and other countries, Iran, North Korea, also taking a significant role. So we need to be tougher on sanctions. We definitely need to see how we can decrease possibilities of circumvention of sanctions. This we also expect, hopefully, from the new presidency. Then we, of course, need to look into the issue of the confiscation of Russian frozen assets, because this is very painful for the Kremlin regime. This is something which can really slow down the aggression and really put us to the discussion about peace. This is a complex of things we need to do, and again, we are in a very short timing. If we don't achieve this, then I don't think that any lasting peace is possible. There will be no real solution if these critical issues are not resolved.
Yasmin, please.
Yeah, just very good remarks. And of course, what I hear you ask is how EU accession can continue while there's a threat of Russian aggression in the region, and it makes it harder. Of course it does. You are fighting a war, and you also have to advance on very, very difficult reforms. So what we do as member states and as friends of Moldova and Ukraine is that we support this agenda, because Ukraine and Moldova are not alone. And when you're protecting a continent from aggression, then of course we stand by your side. In Ukraine, for instance, we are leading the EU's anti-corruption initiative. It's completely implemented by Denmark, and we do that in cooperation with Ukraine to advance on the key aspects of EU integration. And our government has the same perspective when it comes to, for instance, reconstruction. We have a very big reconstruction effort in Mykolaiv region, not because the war is over and now the country needs to be reconstructed, but because business cannot continue. I mean, things cannot continue unless you're supported ongoing the way. So we're not waiting for any war to end before we can advance on neither Ukraine or Moldova's path towards the EU.
Thank you, Yasmin, for this
very short
support message.
Very short comment, because the expression hybrid threats was used in the question from the audience and in the Ukrainian response. This is actually the expression I don't like very much because it's a bit misleading. It's quite obvious that Ukraine for the moment is the main theater of the kinetic war in Europe. But let us remember that hybrid threats actually means the compilation of the completely new threats and very old school ones. So let's not forget that Moldova is also facing very traditional, conventional threats. This is the part of the hybrid. Let's remember that the huge part of this country is occupied by foreign forces. Let's not, and we are touching the issue of defense of the Republic of Moldova. But just a comment on that. But we already touched upon the issue of Transnistria in our conversation.
Thank you, Ambassador. We are coming close to the end of the discussion during this panel. We have another 4 or 5 minutes, and actually I'd like to provide you the opportunity to conclude your remarks by answering to one of the questions that is bothering me for some time already. We do indeed efforts in our countries, I'm sure in Ukraine, in Moldova, in Western Balkans, to outreach to our communities, to the people, to explain the advantages, the challenges, the process of accession to the EU, what that means for us to be part of the EU. But I'm asking myself already for some time what we should do to reach out to communities and people in the countries of the EU itself. What are we doing enough? What we all should do, including governments. Sometimes we feel that governments indeed are a bit further going than the communities. They're pulling them behind in a way. What we should do to make sure that the communities, the citizens in the European Union have a better understanding of the stakes of receiving new countries, new European countries like we are, Ukraine, Moldova, potentially Georgia, maybe other countries, definitely Western Balkans. What would you advise as member states, and at the same time, the same question goes for you, Drita, Katrina, and Kerry. We can start with Yasmin.
Thank you. I think it's a very good question. It's interesting because what Moldova and Denmark really has in common is that we're really small countries. And really small countries cannot stand by ourselves. We need unions, we need to be part of larger groups, we need united values, we need to be able to cooperate with our peers. And it's not only government to government, of course, it's civil society. So civil society is extremely important for Denmark that we have our civil society engagements, which in end, qualifies our government to a bit higher level of understanding because we don't get things only from the government, we can also get it from civil society. So extremely important. I would still say that, Moldova's responsibility to make other member states' people understand the benefits of having Moldova in the country is also on us. I mean, it's also, and it's through your embassies, of course, but it's also, we work in Denmark for the consensus about the enlargements, and we are successful in that. I mentioned that earlier. But I would say just my brief thoughts that you have bigger fish to fry, and you are with partners who help you in this endeavor, and focusing on your close partnerships here is something that will benefit you much more by Danish experience for sure.
Thank you, Yasmin. Tomasz.
The period from summer last year till this summer, till the even elections, time of elections here, is a time of unprecedented intensity of political interactions between Poland and the Republic of Moldova. And it helped a lot to people contact and mutual understanding, and the level of knowledge about Moldova and Moldovan issues is according to my observation, relatively high in Polish society, which wasn't the case a couple of years ago. I do remember very shallow, very simplified media reports about Moldovan developments just after outbreak of the war in Ukraine. Now, thanks to intensity of cultural and political contacts, my friends, my private mates, my colleagues who don't deal with international affairs really follow the Moldovan developments and know a lot about Moldovan political scene, about challenges the country is facing. So consequently, I've got the feeling generally Polish society is immune for Russian propaganda that is very intense in the European Union on Moldovan issues. So more cultural contacts, more political contacts, it will help to leave the level of knowledge.
And more investments
and business, of course. That's why yesterday here in the very same room, lots of Polish and Moldovan entrepreneurs and decision makers and experts on business gathered to talk about possibilities of cooperation. Yeah, sure, of course.
Thank you, Ambassador. Gary?
Yeah, I mean, I live in Poland and I agree. Poles are particularly good and open and energetic about EU enlargement. I think further to the west, I'm not quite sure if there's such a kind of openness about EU enlargement in general, or Ukraine or Moldova, unfortunately. And I think therefore, given that reality, I think that Moldova in this case does have to be more confident and talk about investments and how it can, pave the way for more economic benefits deriving from EU enlargement. Otherwise, it's seen entirely as a loss. When people, I think, consider EU enlargement in Western Europe, they think about it in terms of costs and benefits, and it tends to go towards perception of costs. So you have to drive home the economic benefits, short, medium, and long term as well.
Yeah. Katerina.
Yes, I think it's quite hard to work with many of 27 countries if we are only one country. But if we consider all countries together, Moldova, Ukraine, Western Balkans, probably, hopefully Georgia at some point, then it is much easier. So the strength is in this unity, in actually instrumentalizing this unity, coordinating our messages as much as possible, because together we have much wider reach. Looking into our diasporas in different countries. Some of countries have bigger diaspora in one country, another one in the other country. Then also listening to them and coordinating these messages, having the platforms like this one here today, when we really can hear and exchange in a very good way. So this unity is important. It can bring us more on the shorter term and in perspective. And then, of course, learning a new language, not Spanish or French, but the language of real communication with people, not in Brussels bubble terms, because when we speak only to Brussels, and this is something we learned in Ukraine as well, it's not necessarily will be heard in the same way in other capitals, because argumentation for Brussels is one particular case, but then why Spanish people should care, why Italian people should care, why some other country should care, because the issue is very relevant for Brussels, for example, may not be that much relevant in different countries. So it's about hearing, it's about explaining. Sometimes actually I feel that there is no real problem, there is a misperception. And when we start to talk and to explain a lot about agriculture, a lot about other things, we actually find opportunities. This goes also a lot to business. When we come to Spain with security questions or defense spendings, it may not be that big of the topic, but when we come in terms of reconstruction, business opportunities, new synergies, then we can find a common language. So not forgetting that we operate in this very difficult informational landscape when actually Russia and other countries, they try to weaponize different narratives against us, when they try to use the certain misperceptions and to actually scale them up through certain media and bloggers. We also need to be aware of this, to tailor our argumentation as much as possible, engage with institutions like Stratcoms, have a real insights, because I think we, in the way, overcomplicate this question. Sometimes is not even using words or language, using pictures. When we look into the communication right now, it's done through TikTok, it's done through Instagram, sometimes without single word, just with pictures, images, visualization. So we need to be open to creativity, to creative thinking, not be limited into the old approaches, and just be open for any new types of communication which could be useful.
Thank you.
Well, dear Julian, now I can say happy birthday, as you do everything brilliantly. Also, your closing question was actually brilliant. Because yes, we do focus how to communicate home, but indeed, it is very interesting because I did read recently a paper while EU member states governments have full, strong support for Moldova, Ukraine, and the Western Balkans. It's true that not necessarily translates into the population. But if here we have a different challenge of explaining why it's good to work towards, but also I think the mutual benefits should be explained. Now, with a little bit of joke, I mean, already EU countries benefit from the Western Balkan countries. We have the third generation of diaspora, now even integrated so much that integrated into politics and all different ways of life. But I do agree that it is actually kind of our responsibility, and I agree we should work together how to communicate this. We do have diasporas, some of us organize, some less, but also people-to-people, Ambassador, you said. Universities, think tanks to think tanks, but not enclosed, as you said, bubble meetings in Brussels, but to really pass the message that we're not a group of countries just, you know, begging to become part of the Union just per se, but actually, you know, this is a mutual benefit. Because we will become bigger, stronger, we will contribute to the economy, to the workforce, and to all the elements. So this means mutual benefit for all. So thank you, Julian. I really like this final question. Thank you.
Thank you, Adresa, and thank you very much, the panelists. I think it was very intense, very diverse, a very challenging panel, but I really, really much appreciated your insights and answers. And I'm really happy that we're ending this panel with a focus on people. Because exactly this is what we want to see. We talked a lot about, you know, people, about whole of society approach, and this really will work if it will be across the countries in Europe, and this will indeed drive our shared values, shared objectives for all of us to be where our place is to be in Europe. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank also the audience, very active, very good questions. Thank you very much. Let's applaud the panelists. Thank you. Thank you. Now we are coming to the end of. Please, you may have a seat. We are coming to the end of our conference. It may have been looking too short, but I think it was really, really intense in terms of topics and representation. We're coming to the closing part of this event, this conference, that we are, and my team have been honored to prepare and organize. I'm really happy to see so many of you here with us. Let me just first of all, invite Clara to say a few words as concluding remarks, and then I will finish. Please, Clara.
Thank you all so much for sharing your insights. I sneaked out a little bit during the panel just to promote even further how interesting the discussions were with some of our other partners with which we were discussing online the current context in Moldova and the fact that indeed it is a historical time for Moldova and its orientation is clear. And I think because of all of you, its efforts are a certain bet, if you want, because everyone is engaged in this European trajectory. But maybe just to round up the fact that we started off, or at least I started off my introductory remarks this morning, acknowledging how important stakeholder cooperation is inside Moldova and how wonderful and important the role of think tanks, civic partners, public authorities, international experts is within the efforts that Moldova is currently engaged in. But what I think we come out of this conversation with is that Moldova is not alone, that it actually benefits and stands strong on a series of partnerships and alliances that it has very effectively built, not just on track one, government to government. Everyone is a fan of the trajectory of the Moldovan government and its president, but I think also on track two, between think tanks, experts, academia, international organizations, embassies, partners that stand shoulder to shoulder with the Moldovan people, with the Moldovan authorities in their pursuit of a European future. And so moving on from the domestic multi-stakeholder engagement, I would like to salute the international stakeholder engagement and advocacy efforts that an exceptional organization such as IPRE is engaged in for 10 years now, but it's just an example of the efforts that Moldovan civil society and partners from all across the spectrum, whether it is public sector or business sector, are engaged in to promote Moldova's European future. I'm very proud to be here with you today, and I look forward to future events and collaborations. And again, many congratulations for the conveners and the quality of the engagement in this conference. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Clara, for your words and some final remarks, but also for the partnership that we managed to build. We indeed try to enlarge our partnerships because we believe in partnerships, in cooperation, in the multi-stakeholder engagement, in whole of a society approach. This is something that we really consider very important because it helps us to, to build up bridges and tier walls among us, among our communities, because we are diverse, we are different, living in very different places. And I think what it is important is dialogue. It's inclusive dialogue. It's a share of ideas. I think that is something that we wanted to do through this effort. Every year we try to bring together friends, colleagues from abroad, from the country, from the local level, because we believe in analysis, we believe in thinking, in dialogue, in cooperation. So really much, thank you very much for being with us. I really want to thank also the visiting colleagues, experts, who made it to Chișinău. Really hope that this event, but also the side events that we have managed to organize will enrich your updated knowledge about developments and the stakes and the process. I also very much appreciated the fact that we managed to bring colleagues from Ukraine and Western Balkans into the debate, because I believe that the enlargement process is very much interlinked. We share a lot of challenges, we share a lot of opportunities, but working together, it helps us to advance much faster. Supporting each other, I think it's very important. So also appreciate that. I also appreciate also of course the panelists. Thank you very much, Yasmin, Thomas, and Ambassador for being with us, and of course Christina and her team that has been throughout the day today here. And also I'd like to thank the interpreters who still have been with us, and for all of you who have watched this debate online. Thank you once again. I also want to thank my team who put together this program once again, and I would like to invite you to continue the debates, exchanges during the networking reception that it will follow now. Thank you very much, and all the best for all of us. Thank you once again. Thank you.